Hey, Todd DeWalt here from the Construction Leading Edge podcast, and I want to answer one question for you. If you are a construction business owner, this is one of the questions that I get a lot. How can I create time? Now, a lot of people think, well, how can I manage my time? Well, screw managing time, all right? What if you could create time? What if you could multiply time? What if you could make time slow down? All right. A lot of people tell me when I ask them, like, what do you want more time for? They say, well, I'd like to spend more time on my boat. Didn't even take it out last year. I'd like to spend more time in my deer stand, more time on my race car, working on my car, riding my motorcycle, more time at my kids' softball game, soccer game, basketball game, taking my kids back and forth to practice. Hey, maybe I'd like to take a vacation, maybe just a 3-day weekend. So let me ask you this. Think about this. If you had 4 hours a week to spend on something really high value to you, could be working on your business, maybe it's networking, selling more, training your people, scheduling, planning, what would you spend that time on? Or if you had 4 hours a week to spend on something outside of work, maybe it's more time with the kids, travel more, whatever it would be. But what if you had 4 hours a week during the normal day, what would you spend that time on? That's a good question. That's why we want to create time. So here's the number one thing that I've shared with folks on my podcast, the Construction Leading Edge podcast. I've shared it with dozens of construction business owners that I coach and consult with. Are you ready? Here's my number one tip for you. The one thing that you can do to create time, it's this word, batching. What do I mean by batching? Let's start with communication with your clients. If you're like a lot of contractors, you spend all day, in some cases, responding to emails, phone calls, texts from your clients. Or maybe you spend time answering phone calls, emails, texts, Snapchats, whatever, people sticking their head in your office from your employees, interruptions. So what does batching communication look like? Here's what it looks like. Instead of being a call center to respond to every whim and every random question and every Pinterest board that your client comes across, here's what you do. You send out a weekly update and or you schedule meetings. So you compress your communication with them into an ideally a weekly update that says, hey, this is what we're doing this week. This is what we did last week, and here's what we need from you. And then when they call or text, then you train them to look at that report because that has everything in there that they need. And do not answer your phone. Do not respond to a text after hours because you respond to one text, you've just conditioned them to expect a response. So let's condition them to expect to get their information in a report. Now, how do you set that expectation? You start from the beginning. You put it in your contract. You make sure that they understand that you're not a 24/7 operation and you've got a life too, and you're going to batch your communication with them. Now, how do you batch communication with your employees? You can't send them a weekly update. That would be kind of distant, but here's what you can do. You can have a daily one-on-one call with each person. Maybe it's twice a day, but you set it up at the right time of the day. And you tell them, hey, if it's not an emergency, hold on to that question, and I'll talk to you at lunchtime or at 11 o'clock or whatever the case may be. And you know what will happen is a lot of those questions that they're immediately calling you about, they're going to figure them out by the time you talk to them on the phone. So batch your communication with your employees as well. You also want to batch some of the key activities. Think about payroll, right? If you have employees, do you pay them every day? No. You batch your payroll, and once a week, once every 2 weeks, twice a month, you're batching your payroll. You can do the same thing with a lot of the key activities in your business, like cutting checks. You don't need to cut checks every time somebody calls you. You set up expectations with your trade partners and your suppliers, and you say, hey, we're going to cut checks on the 15th and the 25th of every month, or whatever the case may be. And then you review your invoices prior to that. So instead of doing things throughout the week or throughout the month, batch those activities. Invoice reviews, reviewing financials, cutting checks, scheduling. Instead of scheduling projects and answering questions with your trade partners on the fly as they call you, sit down once a week, Put together your schedule, push it out to all your trade partners, and batch communication that way. That, my friends, is how you create time. One of my clients who used this told me almost immediately he got back 40% of his day because of that one thing. That was just batching communication with his clients. So put this to work for you, batch your communication, think about the activities that you're doing throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, and then ask, how can I batch these and block schedule these things that only do them at certain times? I'm Todd DeWalt from the ConstructionLeadingEdge.com. If you've got a tip on how to create time, leave it in the comment. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.